Hello there, ghosts and goblins, demons and devils, vampires of the night. Halloween is almost upon us, and as you know, that means horror has its day. And I figured, now why not give you a little treat and regale you with a horror short story of my own from my big book of horror shorts, no less. So let's have a look and see what tales we have within these pages. Ah, yes, this one is perfect. This one is a tale as old as time. Good versus evil. Survival. Fight or flight. This is One Left Standing. Grimacing as she struggled to open her eyes, Carla laid on her back, aching from the fall she had just taken through the balcony on the floor above. She had no idea how long she had been there, laying unconscious. A few seconds, a few minutes, hours even, but she knew she couldn't stay there. Carla groaned as she pulled herself up off the floor, wincing hard, wincing in pain, and remembered that she had been smashed in the midsection with brutal, blunt force trauma. Her red hair was matted with blood from a gash across her hairline, and she felt like she may have cracked a rib at the end of her descent, but she knew she didn't have time to waste playing doctor, as he could be anywhere. Checking around and getting her bearings, she realised she was in the main lounge of the lodge they've all been staying in. The log fire was still burning away in the hearth, and it provided a flickering light show on the walls as the shadows danced away. Carla, still feeling the effects, possibly even having a concussion, strained her eyes to focus. The effects of gravity plus floor had really done a number on her, and as she looked around, she saw Brian, slumped against the wall, the kitchen knife used to kill him and kick off the carnage was wedged in his left eye socket. The blood and the goo and the eye mess had dripped down his face. Even to his own friends and family, he would be virtually unrecognisable. The look on Brian's face when he knew he was going to die, the piercing scream when the point of the blade pierced his eyeball, squirting blood and fluid as it forced its way to the back of his skull. This is something Carla could never, ever forget. She could never get that image out of her head. But with him still out there, she could not dwell. She could focus only on the living. "I'll never forget you," she said, as she turned away and headed towards the stairs. Just as she reached the first step, the sound of something dropping to the floor echoed around the lodge. "Jack," she whispered to herself as she slowly crept and ascended the stairs. The sound appeared to come from a far bedroom on the upper floor. Reaching the top of the stairs, Carla peered down the hall and saw a moving shadow through a half-open door. Realising Jack was on the other side of the building, and that she herself was unarmed, she snuck around the banister and quietly made her way towards a utility room, which was luckily in the other direction. Annie, Carla sighed as she passed by the young blonde woman draped over what remained of the balcony. Huge fire axe lodged in her spine. The wooden structure was barely holding after Carla herself had been smashed through a section of it, and a pool of Annie's blood had formed at her feet. The wood itself stained a crimson from the blood flowing down the carved channels. Carla knew she had to keep moving, and she passed her own bedroom on the way to the utility room. The door of her bedroom had been smashed open, and as she stepped forward, she could see Lucy's decapitated body sat upright in a big, formal armchair, killed by the same axe that now resides in Annie's spine. Lucy's head had been removed, and it had been sat between her legs, and Lucy's own hands had been covering the eyes in a twisted gesture of some form of symbolism. Carla was startled by Jack's exclamation of rage and frustration as she heard him looking for something down the hall. Reaching the utility room, Carla carefully opened the door, stepped inside, and slowly closed it behind her. She carefully checked the drawers and shelves, making sure to be as quiet as possible, looking for a weapon of some kind. There were plenty of tools, as you would expect, though as she scanned the implements, Carla didn't feel like any of the tools would be sufficient to take care of Jack. But then she saw it. Perfect, she said. A gleaming sickle with a short, sturdy handle and an arcing steel blade. Even at a glance, Carla could see that this had been honed to an extreme level of sharpness. Lost in thought for a moment, she was snapped to reality by the thudding footsteps of Jack advancing down the hall. Knowing she had to catch him off guard, she scanned around the room for a place to hide and saw a loose panel on the wall. Pulling on it revealed a space behind the wall. Carla darted inside and closed the panel behind her as Jack crashed into the utility room just a few seconds later. He made his way into the space Carla had been occupying just a few moments before. She could see through a crack, though could make out very little of what was going on and what was happening in that room. She held her breath to avoid making any noise whatsoever. Jack, on the other hand, was unconcerned with making noise as he rummaged through the tools in front of him. Hammers, wrenches, saws, clattering to the floor as he tossed them around. Then silence, followed by Jack making a triumphant grunt as he turned and left the room. Carla waited a few moments until she heard his footsteps grow fainter and fainter, then slowly exited her hiding place, sickle in hand. Moving to the door of the utility room, she peered down the hall and saw Jack heading down the stairs with his weapon of choice, a foot-long screwdriver. Carla crept down the upper hallway until she could see down into the lounge area where she had fallen earlier. The shadows continued to dance on the walls as the flames from the fire flickered, and Jack walked towards the main entrance, the front door. He opened it, but paused before closing it again, turning the key to exit, but then turning it back to lock the door again, ensuring there was no escape from the lodge for Carla. With no windows in any of the upstairs rooms, which Annie had queried as odd when the group first arrived, and the ground floor windows unable to be opened. The door was the only way out, and Jack knew it. And Jack knew Carla knew it. As he stepped away from the door, he threw the key on the floor and walked past Brian's corpse towards the kitchen. Seeing her chance, Carla quietly but quickly made her way downstairs and over to the discarded key. Picking it up, she glanced around and saw the coast was clear. "It's now or never," she said to herself, all the while surrounded by pain and death. Inching over to the door, she looked around again. With Jack nowhere to be seen, she put the key in the lock, but inexplicably started fumbling while trying to open the door. It wasn't the key for this door. It seems she had fallen right into Jack's trap. Abandoning the key, she put the sickle into her waistband and used both hands to try and pull the door open. To no avail. It wouldn't budge. "Going somewhere?" said Jack, who had obviously left the key in the open as bait. Carla froze as Jack entered the room, screwdriver in hand. He walked towards her, weapon ready to strike her down. He was right behind her now. She could feel his breath on her neck. "You think you can just walk away? After all this, you think you can just walk out and leave here?" Jack sneered. "Turn around." "Turn around!" His shout, while hand gripped firmly on the handle of his screwdriver, startled Carla, and she did as she was told. Carla and Jack's eyes met as the metal pierced through flesh. Face to face, almost close enough to kiss, if this was a romantic story. Carla's pupils dilated and her body shook as the steel went ever deeper. Another wrench upwards as the sharp metal ripped through internal organs and scraped against bone. A third thrust saw Jack's eyes grow wide, then dim, then empty. As blood gurgled in his throat and dripped from his mouth, he struggled to draw breath. Jack exhaled one final time, having never even got the chance to use his weapon. Carla snapped the sickle from his chest and let Jack drop to the floor with a thud, lacerated from stomach to windpipe. Slamming the sickle blade back into his chest, Carla stepped back to admire the view. Jack, 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 Jack. All you had to do was leave. You could have walked out that door. Could have gone to town, alerted the cops, told them that some maniac had killed all your friends. But you didn't. You chose the path of revenge. You chose the path of the hero. And look where that got you, said Carla to the bleeding soon-to-be corpse in front of her. A few hours later, Carla was at a furnace pit located in the rear of the lodge grounds. The bodies of Brian, Lucy, and Annie piled on top of each other, next to the body of another of their friends, Steve, who Carla had suffocated earlier in the night. The furnace had been used to dispose of livestock that had caught disease back when it was still a working farm. Carla had remodified this to be a body disposal to get rid of the evidence. Jack was still on a little trolley that Carla had used to move the bodies from the lodge to the furnace. So she dumped him onto the pile and lowered all of them, the entire group, into the flames. Carla sat on the trolley as the flames cooked, then eventually removed the flesh of the recently deceased group of friends. They never learn, she said, and because of that, I will always be the one left standing. Carla said this with a smirk as she got up and headed back to the lodge. Less repairs this time, though, she continued, a satisfied grin crossing her face as she closed the furnace doors behind her. "We're here!" exclaimed Germaine as the camper van packed with late teens on a road trip of a lifetime pulled up outside the lodge. Parking out front, Germaine got out along with Chanel, Bryony, Simon, Alison, Jimbo, and Bobby. Grabbing their bags, they headed up to the front door of the lodge and waved as Carla came out to greet them. "Hey there! Welcome to Chevron Lodge," she said, as the group gathered on the porch area. "My name's Carla." "I'm Germaine, and this is Bryony, Simon, Jimbo, Alison, Bobby, and Chanel," Germaine said, as he introduced the group. Nods and high hand waves were exchanged aplenty as the friends all acknowledged their name being called. Carla smiled as the group entered the lodge, elated in the knowledge that the unsuspecting sextet were in for a night none of them will live long enough to be able to forget. Germaine caught sight of a small tapestry hanging above the fireplace. "Live each day as if it's your last," he read aloud. "Cute," added Chanel as they headed upstairs. Carla's eyes widened and she smiled broadly as she closed the front door and headed inside. Thank you for watching or listening. Have a fantastic Halloween, and I will see you soon. Very soon.